Thank you, Phil. So, as Phil says, I did run the London Marathon this weekend, so you will have to excuse me if I groan or yelp throughout the presentation, not intended. But yeah, so I got my charity place for the marathon quite late in the day, which meant that I didn't start training till about mid-January. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll read a couple of books. So I kind of whipped through I think it was the Technical Guide to Running, The Science of Running, read them in a couple of days, and I thought, yeah, I've got this. Did my training, and then the big day came around. And it turns out running the London Marathon in a heat wave, the hottest on record, is very, very different to reading a couple of books on running. So if you only take that away today, I've done my bit. But in all seriousness, the crowds were amazing. I had a fantastic time. It was obviously very, very hard work. I'll be eternally grateful to the woman that gave me a biscuit at mile 18. And as you can imagine, I'll be dining out on this until the day I die. So, who am I, where am I from, and why am I remotely qualified to be talking to you today? Well, my name's Jo Marshall. I'm the marketing director at a company called Stylus. So what do we do? Well, Stylus is a research firm. We're focused on cross-industry, cross-demographic, and cross-geography trends, and the change these will ultimately create that will impact on industry. At Stylus, we help our members not just keep up with change, but get ahead of it. And we do that by providing them with global lifestyle, product, and engagement trend research, so that they can create products and services to meet and exceed their customer expectations. And it's by linking the most important lifestyle, product, and engagement trends, and across 20 different industries that we operate, we basically give our members a really clear and informed perspective, which helps them create future-proof business decisions across product design, marketing, and strategy. And here's a sample of some of our wonderful clients. Prior to Stylus, I've worked at various B2B organisations, sort of in the publishing and events sector, so like UBM, Clarion, EMAP in its various guises. And before I joined Stylus, I was involved in the scoping out of MA in one business, and then I was involved in the rolling out of MA in another business. So when I joined Stylus, I undertook and rolled out MA, in our case Marketo, from start to finish with the help of Clever Touch. And this is in part what I'm going to be talking to you today. And when I was thinking about the session today, and I thought, okay, I'm the last gig of the day, I thought, what's going to be really useful to you guys? What's going to keep you interested? And I thought I'd talk about how we tackled getting MA on board. Not so much from a process point of view. You've got the guys from Marketo here, and you've got the guys from Clever Touch. They can talk to you about the technical side of it. But I thought I would talk to you firstly about how we got buy-in across the business. And then I thought what I'd do is give you a bit of a review of sorts. I don't know about you, but I'm obsessed with reading reviews of pretty much anything I buy. So I thought, well, that could be useful. And then sharing some of our key learnings. Ultimately, I'm not up here selling you anything, albeit if you'd like to talk about a Stylus membership, grab me at the end. So I'm going to give you a really, really honest account of how we found it, kind of warts and all. But don't worry, Clever Touch, I'll behave. So what I'm going to do is set the scene slightly. As I appreciate, I've seen the attendee list. There's lots of different businesses in the room today. And I just want to give some context around how we were operating pre-MA. So when I joined Stylus, which was just over 18 months ago, as a marketing department, our marketing activities were in the main focused towards raising awareness of the brand and less on lead gen. We were using MailChimps to send emails, and we pretty much had a spray and pray approach. So we didn't have much insight into how the data was behaving. We couldn't run nurturing campaigns, and there was no way to send automated emails based on behavior. Leads pretty much constituted opens and clicks of emails, form downloads, social media clicks, event attendees. We'd basically hand them over to the sales team on a weekly basis, and they couldn't be managed effectively. And it involved the marketing team sitting down with the sales team, asking them what had worked, and hoping that they'd remembered. So essentially unqualified and unmanaged leads. We had very little information on what was working, and to help steer where we should be spending our time, energy, and budget. And ultimately, what was converting people into buying memberships. What this meant is we'd often be calling people at the wrong time, in most cases way too early. It'd be a case of they'd opened and clicked an email, and our sales team would be calling them, asking if they want to buy a membership. So they weren't expecting to be contacted, let alone being asked to buy something. And this meant that everything was incredibly manual, and we had very little insight. We did have Salesforce, which was one saving grace, but being massively underutilized, as we were sort of talking about earlier, pretty much a contact dumping ground, and really kind of not even that. But what we did have is we had a really fantastic product. Our renewal rates are just under 90%. So if you've ever worked in a membership or a subs-based business, that's pretty good. So, that was the one thing. We had a good product, but in short, we needed to do a lot on the marketing side. So moving on to how we approached rolling out MA. What do we do? How do we start to transform our business? How do we get buy-in? Well, the first thing was to really clarify what we wanted to achieve. What did the future look like? This meant cementing marketing's role in supporting selling memberships and a real change from how we've been working. So we worked with Clever Touch to establish our goals and our priorities and scoping out what we wanted to achieve. What was guiding this is that marketing should be opening the door and sales should be closing it. So we set our objectives. There was a lot, as you can imagine, that we wanted to achieve, but we knew we needed to be realistic and be really, really focused. So number one on the list was us having smarter revenue and having a more efficient sales team, having them focused on what they do best, selling. We wanted to ultimately transform the way that we were working, sales and marketing working towards one goal. Number two was gaining greater insight into what activities were driving sales and retention. So us having insight into what activity was actually working and driving the revenue. And thirdly, compliance and order. So essentially ensuring that we could manage our client and prospects' preferences and that pesky little thing called GDPR. So we knew what we wanted to achieve, we just needed to get the rest of the business on board. We had a number of key stakeholders to get buy-in before we could go any further. So first up were our sales directors. We spent time working with them on what we wanted to achieve, really understanding their challenges and their pain points, and then making sure that we were aligned with our goals. A big one was building and agreeing our sales funnel right and the changes that would be required in how we were working. Marketing had no defined role in the sales funnel, and we were looking to change this, and I'll go on to that in a bit more detail later on. And looking at how we would score leads, what behaviour and demographics as well would constitute being marketing qualified, so our future leads, our MQLs. So I'll be honest, getting their buy-in was relatively easy. We were going to be giving them more leads and making their teams more effective. What was not to like? Our next three groups of stakeholders weren't as easy. So first up, we had the CEO and the CFO. They were ultimately going to be signing the cheque for the investment that we wanted. I was the new kid on the block. I'd only joined a couple of months prior, and I was asking for what was quite a sizable size of investment. And they were comparing what we were asking for what we were spending on MailChimp, what we were using at the time. So we had a little bit of a task on our hands convincing them. So firstly, we placed emphasis on showing marketing automation as the key to business growth and transforming the way we were working, that it wasn't just a piece of software, so not comparable to how we were currently working. We then positioned it as the solution to enhance sales effectiveness and for them to get more from every single salesperson. And we focused on the benefits around this. So basically enabling us to accelerate predictable business growth. We then talked about the predicted performance improvements that we'd gained from knowing precisely which marketing activities were driving revenue and how we'd optimise our spend. Next up was our sales team, and I would say this was the most challenging of all. Most probably not a surprise to most of you in the room, but getting us aligned and working together. We had the buy-in from the sales directors, which was great, but we ultimately needed the sales team on board. They were at the coalface of selling, and they were the ones that were going to be bringing this to life. So there was a huge amount of work done around educating the sales team, around what marketing automation was, what the benefits were, and getting the buy-in, and what the benefits were to them at the end of the day. We took time to explain how we'd like to change the ways in which we were working. We were ultimately going to be giving them more leads and qualified ones, but we were asking a lot more of them, and we were changing the way that they were working, for example, enforcing Salesforce. So we really focused the benefits on and what it would bring to them. A few years back, as I mentioned, I was working at a business where I joined and MA was being rolled out. And this process didn't happen, and it was a major, major downfall. The sales team weren't involved in the process at all. They had no idea where their leads were, once they found their leads, what to do with them. And it meant that they were hugely frustrated and they weren't brought into the process. And as a result, it was a complete failure. So this is key, right? It's essentially change management. We haven't just had one workshop. We've sat down with them over the course of the year repeatedly. We've tried to keep them informed at every stage, getting their feedback as well and their buy-in, answering any questions and keeping them informed. Our final stakeholder was our head of IT. And I'm smiling because I'm looking at Adam, and Adam spent quite a bit of time with me working on this one. So our head of IT, he was really concerned about marketing automation. He was essentially concerned about loss of control with us bringing in a brand new system. So we took time to involve him in the product demos. We had all of the MA vendors come in, show us the systems fully, so that he could understand the capabilities, the tech being used, and address any concerns that he had, one of which was around security. Our in-house team is really, really small, so we reassured him that once we were up and running, we would be able to work autonomously. We wouldn't be putting any extra pressure on him and his team, and that we would be able to manage it ourselves. He really got on board when he saw the reporting capabilities, and he realized that Marketo could hook into Tableau. We were using Tableau as a business for our website reporting, but again, another system that was underutilized. So we were going to be breathing life back into this system, and that was hugely motivating for him. So what else did we do? Well, as a marketing team, I sat down and I looked at the roles that we had, and what else did we need to kind of embark into this new world? There was no point at looking at the rest of the business if our team itself wasn't right. So we needed somebody to manage the database and Salesforce. I'm sure that might sound obvious to a lot of you, but we didn't have that. We also needed this role to enforce using Salesforce, and this not just being a contact database. We also looked at who was going to be producing the content for our marketing campaigns, as these were going to change significantly with our new capabilities. As I'm sure with a lot of you, the marketing team, or our marketing team, were producing all of the content, building the campaigns, doing the data selections. And this is something that I decided to look at with the role of MA. So we actually created a new role within the team, which is that of our brand editor. And they basically focused on producing all public-facing marketing content. And that's something that I'll touch on a bit more in shortly. So how do we do? The review. This is the good part. Okay, so let's take a look at the successes, the highs, the positives, the results of MA. Firstly, as a result of rolling out MA, we had success in changing how our sales funnel operates and how we were working as a business managing leads. So pre-rolling out marketing automation, this was our funnel. So we only had 3 stages. We had prospects at the top. We had those with an open opportunity, which we call at Stylus our prospects in play. And we had no clearly defined parts of the funnel that marketing were responsible for. So you'll see that it just goes down to client. We then moved to this looks sort of similar to what Vicky was showing earlier. So we have clearly defined stages of the funnel. I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail because I thought Vicky did a great job earlier. It's really interesting. But this was a huge achievement for us because we didn't have this before. So we've now got our target prospects. We've got those that are engaged, and we've those that have crossed the lead scoring threshold, so our MQLs. And just a note on the MQLs, I know Vicky touched briefly earlier on lead scoring. When we looked at our lead scoring, we sat down with the sales directors, I mentioned it earlier, and we decided to score our leads 2 different ways. So we're scoring them explicitly and implicitly. So on the explicit side, we're looking at the demographics and firmographics that we want to see. So for us, we're a premium-based product, and we only want to be talking to a really small selection of people within the business. So normally the C-suite or the directors within the business. So we've scored those with those job functions a lot higher and those lower down, slightly lower. And obviously on the implicit side, we looked at the behaviours. So us determining what sort of behaviour we wanted to see and how much of it we wanted to see. And then once they qualify as an MQL, they're past the sales and they own this part. And once they're qualified as a sales prospect, They either need to try and secure a meeting and get that to an open opportunity to the prospect in play, or they become a client. So we have a much more effective sales funnel. We now have defined what are leads and what constitutes a marketing qualified lead. So there's no more opening clicks of emails. We've got scoring in place, and we're contacting people at a more appropriate time. We can also track activity and see what's happening with prospects. We aren't so reliant on the sales team coming back for feedback. So those event attendees, or those that come through paid social media, we can see what campaigns they were sent, when they converted to an MQL, and how the conversation has progressed with the sales team as well. So we know what should be happening exactly to every contact at every stage of the funnel. We also have a greater level of insight through Marketo sales insights. So this basically bolts onto Salesforce, really, really useful. So the sales team have valuable information on the leads and how they're behaving. They can see exactly what content each contact has looked at. So they can make a much more informed decision when talking to a prospect and deciding the approach to take with them. We can also track marketing's contribution. So apologies, I know you've seen a few dashboards today, but this is our one. And as I mentioned earlier, we were using Tableau for reporting, website reporting. So we work with CleverTouch to create these detailed dashboards to see the impact of marketing activity and how contacts were moving through every stage of the sales funnel. And this enabled us to show marketing's contribution back to the business. And I will say that one thing I have taken off here, I've sort of sliced it off the side, is that we do have revenue on there as well, contributed by marketing. We've put in SLAs around with our sales team around when they should be actioning leads. What this means is then we can chase them for any reason if leads are sitting in the MQL stage. Another piece of work that we're looking at the moment is the impact that we're having on meetings booked, as that's another KPI for us. It's not just about whether the revenue's coming in. We want to be able to see how many meetings we're generating. Because again, like Marketo, we work on a slightly longer sales cycle, so we want to be able to monitor activity in the meantime. So rolling out MA has also enabled us to change the approach that we take to content. And I sort of touched on that briefly earlier, but we can start to map content now to the different stages of the buyer journey. So we're able to identify where exactly they are in the process. As I mentioned earlier, we've created this new role, so our brand editor. And he's basically responsible for producing all of the marketing content. So we've spent time creating campaigns around every stage of the buyer journey. So taking prospects through the awareness, the consideration, and the decision phases. And a real focus for us has been generating content for the top of the funnel, as that's stuff that we haven't had before, and that's the stuff that's creating the most meaningful engagement. Our first campaign, which launched in November, we took this approach, and we had engagement like we'd never had before. So within the emails, we'd featured some of our content experts, and we had prospects contacting them directly, which wasn't the call to action. People were just reaching out to contact them. And we also had people tweeting out our content, making bespoke posts, and that's stuff that we haven't seen before. So it's great. Lastly, we also had compliance. So before we rolled out GDPR, we weren't fully compliant. And I'm sure that you are all bored of hearing about GDPR, so I'm not going to harp on about the data doomsday that's upon us or not, who knows. But before rolling out MA, we weren't recording preferences and we weren't compliant. So having MA enables us to have full preference center capabilities. And this basically integrates with Salesforce as well, so that we've got a full record and we are fully compliant now. So we've had some good progress and successes and delivering value back to the business. But what challenges did we face? So I said at the beginning of this presentation, I'd give an honest review of how we found it. So I guess sometimes it felt a little bit like this. Yeah, that's a goat climbing a mountain. As I say, we were undergoing business change, and change can be really hard. We were asking for investment. We were rolling out new software. We were getting existing software used. We were getting everybody talking and on the same page. And we're also quite a small marketing team. So it's really hard, right? But rest assured, like the good old mountain goat, and I've Googled them, apparently they're really good climbers. We cracked on and we did a good job, but it wasn't without its challenges. So we worked with Clever Touch over 10 months to roll out Marketo, which I've been told by Adam, it's not bad. And yes, I am a bit demanding. It's not a quick fix, right? You know, there's a lot of groundwork to be done. And we were trying to do this whilst doing our business as usual. The software is fairly complex, as you'd expect with everything that it can do. But the marketing team took a lot. It took a lot to get them trained up. It's completely different from how they were working before. And I'd worked at previous businesses where the team were just left to get on with it, and it was incredibly tough. So this time we've invested in actually spending on having a bit of training for the marketing team, which has made a huge difference. But it's still taken time, and it's meant they weren't up and running quickly. So I've had to take time managing the expectations of the business, in particular our CEO, around what we can achieve. It also took a lot of time for us to get set up, get Marketo set up with Salesforce, and then time spent setting up things like email templates, landing pages, which we initially thought would be a little bit easier than it was. So what I would say is it's not a plug and play, and once you're up and running, you're not done. You know, I'd frequently say to my colleague Mark, you know, we're building the ship as we sail. And, you know, I know Vicky said earlier, just do it. And, you know, I completely embraced that. You know, we'd got to the stage where we were okay to set sail, but we still had lots to do. So back to the sales team. So the sales team, as you know, as I've sort of said, they took time to get on board. And we repeatedly sat down with them, getting it embedded in their everyday lives. And, you know, I'll be honest, it was still a struggle, I'm not going to lie. And one of the things that we struggled slightly with was managing their expectations. And I was talking to Rick earlier from Marketo, and it kind of really resonated with what you said to me is, you know, the sales team are like, where are my leads? You know, why have we not got more? And, you know, we'd spent so much time explaining to them that it was going to take time for the leads to come through, but there was still this expectation that we'd plug in and that the leads would come flying through. Also, I'm on the sales follow-up side of things. You know, this is really important, especially when it's not done from a sales inquiry. So when it's done through lead scoring. We made the mistake of not doing this initially, and some of the messages that the sales team were sending were not quite right. So you need to look holistically at the whole process. What happens when the sales leads are passed over? Also, follow-up from inbound leads is really, really important, and this needs to be managed. And I'm amazed that it's not thought about more. And the other week, my head of legal, she got sent an email about a lead gen event, and it was from an MA company. It wasn't Marketo, it was another one. But I'll keep it anonymous for the purpose of this. But she said, you know, it looks like a really good event, why don't you go? And I took a look at it, and I thought, actually, you know, we've got lots of events on ourselves, really busy. But I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll sign up to the newsletter. You know, I like to keep abreast. But I thought it'd be really interesting to see what they do to me as a contact. So, you know, just fill in my details. The next day, I get an email from the head of sales. Straight away, he just asks me, hi there, you know, see you registered for our newsletter. Are you interested in taking out marketing automation platform? Could we have a chat? And I was genuinely stunned. This is what these guys do for a living. I hadn't been nurtured anyway. There was no awareness. It was just straight in. And, you know, admittedly, we're using Marketo, right? So it's a non-starter. But I think even if it hadn't been, I really wouldn't have been open to talking to that salesperson. So sales follow-up is hugely important. Lead scoring, this isn't an exact science, you know, at least that's how we felt. And it's not something that you'll necessarily get right straight away. We had little insight to begin with around what was working. So determining the point at which a prospect is ready to buy and be handed over to the sales team is challenging. And it's something that needs continual reviewing. And getting the exact content right is also something that takes time. We found that some of our MQLs haven't been right, and that there have been a few tire kickers in there. But to an extent, I guess that's to be expected. And, you know, we did expect that. We've got a slightly fatigued database, and we knew that we wanted just to get some campaigns out and running to get some insight around how the data was behaving. Spam bots. So we sort of debated putting this up there, but I thought I'd add it in at the end. So we also encountered spam bots meddling with our lead scoring. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of what spam bots are, because I'll be honest, I've only just recently found out about them myself. But we encountered spam bots meddling with our lead scoring, which meant that the sales team were calling MQLs that had left the business or they were getting kind of out of offices saying this person's left, which, as you can imagine, went down as a lead balloon. So I guess the purpose of this is just to demonstrate that there are going to be problems, as with anything of this nature, and just to expect that and to adapt. So I've shared some of our successes today and some of our challenges. You know, we've made real headway in how we are delivering value back to our business. So what are our key takeaways? Well, I think firstly, ensure that you have your goals defined. Know that what you're looking to achieve. Make sure that you have a project plan. It's something that I haven't touched on huge amounts today, but we worked with Clever Touch through the whole process. And it's hugely important, you know, what you're doing and where you're going and what you need to do. Define your stakeholders. Who is it that matters? And make sure you get their buy-in and spend time getting their buy-in. It may take more than one conversation. It may be repeatedly saying the same thing, but in different ways. And give them the opportunity to feedback as well. Listen. I think the other thing is, you need to be a real advocate. You know, getting marketing automation on board in our business was a huge thing. We're quite a small business, but I think it was really, really important that we lived, that we were living and breathing what we were saying. So that's a brief review of how we tackled getting MA on board. And every day at Stylus HQ, we talk about helping our customers anticipate change. And that's the big takeaway from me today. We've not just rolled out a piece of software into our business. We've changed the way that we were working 12 months ago. We've transformed our processes, how sales and marketing are working together, and we have marketing accountable for driving revenue and leads. It's most certainly not a quick fix, but it has opened the door for us reaping big rewards and entering a new era of marketing. So this is me. If you'd like to connect or say hi, it's always good to hear from like-minded folks. And as you are marketing folks, or I think in the main in the room you are, I've arranged for you to have access to one of our member-only reports, which is looking at diversity. So we examine 3 ways you can boost your brand's relevance and predict the changing perspectives of Gen Z, millennials and boomers, and how that will affect their lifestyles and habits in the future. We've also got, hobble over, only a few of these, but this is one of our latest macro trends, which is looking at luxury being redefined, so the new rules of luxury, and we've got a few of them at the front here if you do want to grab one. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and thanks.
Thank you. Wow. That was stunning, and thanks for the several mentions there in the presentation, Joe. And it's been a pleasure working with you. So I first met Joe in a bar. Don't laugh. It was in a bar when she had no meeting room and no office space in the Hilton. I thought, this is a bit of a dodgy place to meet, but we'll go with it anyway. And Joe had come from a business that we'd worked with previously that had a failed project, not because of us, I might say, but because of internal organisational challenges. So one of the things that Joe referred to throughout her presentation was a lot around business transformation and business change, as well as marketing. You can see that it touched every single area of the enterprise in terms of her business. Now imagine if you're a global enterprise and you've got to bring people with you. There's going to be political at play. There's going to be changes in process. In the sales guys, they've got massive egos. I know I have one. I've lost my watch, but I've still got my sales attitude, which is great because I drive sales and marketing in our business. But in terms of bringing those folks with you, if you can provide them with some compelling reasons why you're doing this and you can demonstrate it through results, it allows you to mitigate your personal risk of that change and demonstrate to the board that you've made a right decision. And on reflecting on where you've come a massive long way, Joe, and I applaud you for that. So, and thank you for the business. Our role really as Clever Touch is to take people on a journey to mitigate their personal risk as a marketeer, bring you thinking and challenge your way you do business, but also make sure that the people you're trying to convince to go on a journey with you are informed and has a direction, and there's a clear state of where you are today and there's a vision where you want to go. Joe touched this in her presentation earlier, and we help look at the business challenges you're facing. Now, Joe's was a revenue challenge. In some organisations in financial services, it's insight and intelligence. They don't want more revenue, they don't want more customers, they know what it is. In some other organisations in PE or startup businesses, it's all about driving the customer base and getting people through the funnel. So in every single case, we look at you as an organisation and we help you through that transitional process. So with that in mind, I'm going to open the floor to questions to the three presenters. And if I could just invite, you can stay where you are, Joe. If I can just invite Adam and Vicky to the stage, then we can take questions if there's any. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Right, anybody got a question at all? One over there.
So as a reminder to Joan, actually, you mentioned about training your team. What format of training worked best for you, and what would you advise? What sort of period of time?
Yeah. So the business that I worked at prior, the team were just literally left to sit down and watch some of the videos. And I think, the videos were good, but I think it's finding the time, and then the team weren't really taking it in because they had lots of people coming up to them whilst they were at the desks. And Marketo is amazing because it can do so much, but it really does take time to explain it, and then having the team being able to ask questions. So we actually had Clever Touch. I think we did it, was it 9-10 days we did in the end? And we did it kind of in batches. So we rolled out, we got live. A month later, Clever Touch came in. We did 2 days back to back, and Mark sort of sitting in front of you he was in the training, and so was Marlon. And then what we'd do is we'd leave it another 2 months, have some more training, and we just keep going like that. We didn't do all of the training in one go. We were kind of letting the team, I guess, kind of run with it, kind of unearth problems. And what they'd quite often do is, there's kind of like a syllabus that Clever Touch put together, which is great. But quite often we'd end up kind of overriding that and being like, oh my God, since we saw you last, we've got all of these questions. How does this work? Can you help us with our lead scoring? Lead management isn't working quite right. And that's how we found it best, is kind of in part from the Clever Touch informing the agenda, but from the marketing team saying this is what we want to cover. And then, we did the 9 or 10 days. And, we're kind of at a point now where I'll be honest, we're self-sufficient. So Mark's kind of manning the ship, and it's, where we haven't hit any icebergs. But we then have been working with Clever Touch on having a very sort of small retainer, but having kind of like, we started off having weekly calls with them. So again, we'd save up all our queries, and the team would just ask all of them and get things resolved over the phone. And that's how we've done it. And it might seem to some people like, oh, well, there's loads of support online, and there is. But I think it's the team being able to talk to somebody and have their questions addressed, and then actually even feeding back in. So sometimes we've worked collaboratively with Clever Touch and said, we've got a bit of a problem here, and we sort of both go away and look at things. But I think having that sort of two-way dialogue and interaction is the best way, at least for our team, to sort of learn.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, if that's okay. So to get certified in the Marketo platform, we typically, rule of thumb, as Joe said, level of effort, 2 weeks, but space it over, and we tend to train in your platform with your assets to make it relevant. Rather than doing upfront, Joe articulated perfectly as to why you don't want it that way. You want to drip it in as your knowledge and understanding increases. But then, structure follows strategy. So you've got to think about the wider implications, and you want everyone to be, absolute experts on the platform. No, but maybe your campaign owners need to have a moderate understanding of it as well. So increasingly, organisations, they are shifting budget once they go live to organisational development and tiering that development and understanding all the way down to some of the sales engagement. We've got a client that's got 2,000 sales people that are going to be trained on the Marketo Sales Insight tool. Well, how much level of effort do they need? And we're allocating around about half a day for them, which is enough to get them going. And you try and get a salesperson in the room for more than a day, it's just like herding cats. So it's not going to happen. So again, structure follows strategy, build a tiered organisation. You heard Joe talk about bringing in new skills as well. You can't just impose it on the structure that it is today and expect outstanding results.
And I think the other thing I'd say is, I remember my finance director being like, okay, so are we done with Clever Touch now? That's it, we're live. And I think, but I can't reiterate that enough, that this is just not software. It's so much more than that. And them having to understand that we are, we've transformed part of our business, but we've still got so much more to do, and we need support with this. It isn't a case of we're up and running and that's it, you're on your own. And just making sure that, I guess, the powers that be, those that are signing the check, realise that this is kind of, without sort of kind of that sort of business bullshit, it is a journey, kind of an ongoing thing.
I think if I can just add to that, one of the things that we find quite often is that we bring new thinking to an organisation and across vertical markets. Something that might not be perceived as good best practice in one organisation, we bring thinking from that organisation, say, okay, software businesses do this really well around subscription services. Let's apply that to a financial services business. And your content, your creative ambition, but it challenges your thinking, and we bring new marketing ideas to the table as well as the technical skills. And then when you're looking to impart that knowledge to your team, we bring that outside thinking to your organisation that differentiates you from some of your competitive peers. Okay.
But there's so much that you can do because things all like Marketo are so feature rich. It is a case of working out what's going to have the biggest impact, so starting there. And I love the idea that you train people over time because then you've got the context from one piece to move on to the next.
Yeah, it's layering on that complexity and ambition as well. And we had to slow Jan down because she's a bit ambitious. That's great. Any other questions at all? Aha, hi.
Another question for Joe. You talked about your SLAs that you have with sales.
Yeah.
Can you give us a bit more detail about sort of time frames and then how they actually respond to those?
Ideally, and I'll be honest, I can't stress it enough. Like, we've made leaps and bounds with our sales team, but we are, every day is still, we still struggle a little bit. We're based in 2 different offices, so we've got one in the US and one in the UK. And I'll be honest, ironically, it's the UK office that we're struggling with more. It's just that resistance to change. But really, our SLA is when something goes to an MQL, within 48 hours, that should be actioned, right? Because, this is a warm lead that we're giving you. How has it worked? I think the dashboard that I showed you earlier, we've got a lot of people sitting at MQL at the moment. In fact, I think we went from one day we had 50, and then I said to Mark, oh, how's it looking today? He went, oh yeah, we've got 800. I was like, what? And we've been running our GDPR campaigns, which have been doubling up as lead gen as well. So we haven't just been going opt-in, opt-in, opt-in. We've been giving away reports and stuff. So that's also been interfering with our lead scoring. But in the main, 48 hours is when they should be replying. And they're getting better. So quite often Marlon will do sort of the legwork. He'll be pulling reports to identify those offenders that have got MQLs that haven't moved through. He'll sit down with them. And I guess maybe we'd say like 70% will be actioned. And then 9 times out of 10, I'll have to kind of wade in with my size 9s and, right, guys, why have these not moved through? And it's getting better, like the more and more leads are being pushed through. And in the main, we've got some people that are really, really proactive in doing that. But they're the repeat offenders, those that are resistant to change. And I think we're starting to see, some real results now. And I think those that are playing the game and working through the process, and we're kind of using those as sort of like the golden child, and saying, well, look at Lee, he had 50 MQLs and now he's got 3 meetings off the back of that. And people are going, oh God, well, I better action my MQL. So I guess it's picking out your superstars as well and kind of praising them and kind of showing them off to the rest of the team.
Vicky, you showed that really good bubble graph just now, which I hope you don't mind, I'll copy. But was that, so what was the attribution behind that? So was that first touch or was that multi-touch?
Multi-touch.
It's multi-touch.
Yeah, so all of the attribution that we look at is multi-touch. Otherwise, it's just so skewed towards things like Google, and we know that that's only part of it. But because that's all built into our Marketo reporting, it means that diagrams like that bubble diagram are press a button. They're there because it's all built in.
I might have missed the detail, but I didn't see whether there was an unpaid activity in there.
Unpaid.
So yes, you've got the financial search.
Yes.
It was
yeah.
there, was it?
Yeah.
Did you put any cost to that? Or?
It's a difficult one. It's a bit like things like email programs, nurture programs. So there's no cost. There's no initial outlay in the marketing budget, but there's 10, 12 years of people building up a database and the Marketo instance and all that kind of thing. So we don't attribute a cost or an investment to that, otherwise it becomes it's almost too tenuous because then you're pulling on, well, this happened, this was put in place 3 years ago, so we'll take a little bit of that. So for us, it doesn't make sense to put that in.
Okay. I think that's about it then, guys, unless anybody's got any more questions. Okay, so everyone's been left one of these on the seat, so if you could just take 5 minutes and fill that in, we'd very much appreciate it. And We gave one of these Amazon dots away last time to the speaker, so we'll have to do something for Joe outside. I think a therapy might be worthwhile. But thank you very much for coming, everybody. Thank you.